Welcome back, everybody, to another Predecessor hero guide. This is a beginner guide to Steel. Steel the Lone Guardian is one of Predecessor's best offlaners right now, and he is flexible enough to play in the support and even jungle role when necessary. Steel is a CC-focused tank who thrives in close quarters fighting and can lock down an enemy with a CC long enough to kill nearly any target in the late game. If you like preventing enemies from playing the game, all while taking little to no significant damage yourself, go ahead and play Steel. Steel's passive is Battering Barrier. Each time Steel immobilizes an enemy hero with an ability, he gains a shield for 5 seconds. This shield can stack infinitely, although each instance applied, based on each of your individual abilities, has its own 5-second cooldown, so it doesn't just last forever. This passive is incredible for your survivability due to how much CC Steel's kit has. Simply put, you won't die if you use this passive to its fullest potential. Steel's right mouse button is Bash. This is a close-ranged attack that deals significant magical damage which scales off of enemy maximum health. This hits all enemies in a small cone in front of Steel, so you can use it on multiple targets at once. On top of the damage, this ability also applies a brief stun. This ability is incredibly strong and procs Steel's passive ability, applying the temporary shield. This is the ability you will use most often as it is very effective in duels and it has quite a short cooldown. Steel's Q is Bull Rush. Steel charges forward, dealing damage to and knocking back all enemies in his path. Against minions and monsters, instead of knocking them back, it'll stun them in place. This is a great way to close the distance on your victims, escape from predators, and, most notably, push your enemies into dangerous positions. Use this ability aggressively to send enemies flying into towers, allied ultimates, and grouped up allies. As a mid lane main myself, we always appreciate a Steel that throws the enemy Kalari straight back into our Gideon ultimate. Surprisingly, the cooldown on this Bull Rush is rather short, especially with some ability haste. The cooldown is even shorter than Sevarog's dash, which doesn't even have damage or the knockback. Much like your right mouse button, Steel's Q also procs the passive. It's also important to note that for each enemy Steel passes through during his charge, it will give him an extra stack of his passive, so you can get a lot of shield very quickly. Steel's E is Force Shield. Deploy a wall of energy that blocks all incoming projectiles during its duration. Enemy heroes that pass through the wall will take magical damage and are slowed for a brief duration. This ability is very self-explanatory, but be sure to use it to block big ultimate abilities or heavy CC abilities whenever possible. This is a great counter to Sparrow ult, Richter hook, or even Howie ult if you're far enough away to get the right angle. Before the game even starts, you should evaluate the enemy team composition and plan which abilities you'll want to block in teamfights. Just be wary of this ability's massive cooldown, especially early on. This is the only ability in Steel's kit that does not proc his passive. It is important to note that this E does not prevent tower shots from going through it, so you still have to be careful of those. A great way to use this ability is also to block enemy ranged characters from being able to hit, say, a tower or even the Prime Guardian buff or the Fangtooth buff. It's a great way to stop them from being able to deal a last hit if need be. Steel's ultimate ability is Shield Slam. Steel leaps into the sky and comes crashing down on top of his enemies, dealing magical damage and knocking up all enemy targets in the area and stunning them for a brief duration. This is a very simple ultimate ability, but it can do major damage when used properly. This will also stack a proc of your shield for each target hit in the area, allowing you to get a large burst of shield very quickly if you hit a large group of enemies. This makes for a great opening strike against a group of enemies, as your whole team can then follow up with all of their most important abilities while the enemies are immobilized. And on top of that, you will gain that huge burst of shield to prevent them from having effect with their abilities. You can also use this ultimate to get over walls if you either need to get away from enemies or engage onto a Fangtooth fight in a pinch. I typically start the game by unlocking my right mouse button, and then my Q, and then focusing on leveling up my right mouse button first. Unless I'm facing a ranged opponent in the offlane, I don't typically recommend unlocking your Force Shield until level 7, after you get your ultimate ability. This can change if you're getting flanked often by a ranged opponent, but generally you won't need your E early on. Once you have your ult, it becomes incredibly easy to gank other lanes and roam a little bit. Steel's strong early game combo is his Q right mouse button combo. This will knock back your opponent, ideally under your tower or into your allied minions, and then you follow up with your stun to delay their escape or retaliation. Once you get your ultimate online, feel free to use it to secure the kill on your laner if they are escaping your grasp. Alternatively, if your laner is near your tower, but you can't quite get behind them to bull rush them under tower, hit them with your shield bash first. This should stun them just long enough for you to get behind them if you timed it right. Then you can charge them under tower. This is very situational, and you have to time it perfectly, so don't be too risky when using this if you can't afford the risk. In teamfights, it's your job to soak up plenty of damage and CC as many people as possible as often as possible. Protect your teammates by helping them shut down your most threatening enemies. Steel's builds are all quite straightforward, and since the game is constantly updating, his builds are ever changing. There are lots of great videos out there for different build guides on Steel, so I recommend checking those out. Without further ado, that is going to do it for today's video. If you liked it, hit that like button down below, and consider subscribing so you can catch more guide videos like this in the future. Also, check my channel out, as there are plenty of guides for other characters on there. If you have any suggestions or want to see any particular guides, let me know down in the comment section. And without further ado, have a lovely rest of your day, morning, evening, afternoon, and night. Bye-bye.